IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat. Hello and welcome to All Things Policy. I'm Aditya Parekh. Today's episode is dedicated to discussing the latest US Department of Defense China Power Report. To discuss it, today I have with me my colleague, Suyash Desai. Before we begin, I'd just like to mention that the Takshashila Institution is offering graduate certificate program in defense and foreign affairs, which would be perfect for anyone interested in topics like the one we are discussing today. We also offer other policy-related courses. To know more, visit school.takshashila.org.in. So, welcome, Suyash.
Hi, thanks, Aditya. It's nice to be talking to you after a long interval. I think we have not been podcasting together for some time now.
Indeed, it's great to see you again, Suyash. So, to begin with, since we've discussed this topic and previous iterations of the DoD China Power Report on this podcast many times, what would be the most important developments that you can see that have been mentioned in this report? Can you give us a small primer on that?
You're absolutely right, Aditya. We have discussed this. We have discussed previous editions of this report, 2019 edition, 2020 edition. Also, the 2021 edition, we have discussed nuclear, which came out this Monday, nuclear developments. So PLA had, to talk about important developments from this report, PLA had a very busy year in 2020. So first and foremost thing, the report 2021 talks about the developments in 2020. So PLA had a very busy year in 2020. It was involved on multiple activities on its periphery. First and foremost, as we are all aware and all facing, 2020 was the year when the pandemic started, and it started from Wuhan in China. And naturally, PLA was involved in managing the pandemic. So that was the first thing that PLA did in 2020. If you remember, Aditya, in May, when the pandemic in China or epidemic in China slowly started becoming normal or a new normal, China got involved with India on the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. That was the second most thing that happened, the second most important thing that happened that year. Furthermore, there were multiple activities happening in the South China Sea in the middle of the year, say around June, July, August. Also, just a reminder, that is when US's approach towards South China Sea changed. I think that was July 2020. From September, October 2020, China started doing the things that they are doing right now in Taiwan's ADIZ. That is, they started dispatching regular aircrafts to Taiwan's ADIZ. That was the fourth important highlight of the year. And the fifth one, of course, was the new military guidelines, which were issued in November 2020. It is important because the guidelines, the name itself suggests that it guides the PLA on how to conduct operations. The previous guideline, this is important because the previous guidelines were introduced in 1999. These are the first guidelines that are introduced since the PLA reform started in 2015. Okay, but this was a brief summary. But from the report, what I could understand, there are three most important themes, or there are three most important themes in this report. First, I will not deep dive into the nuclear modernization, which is the most important theme in the report, but we have done a separate podcast on it. And I'm sure our listeners have heard the Monday podcast on nuclear modernization. But just briefly, I'll wrap up what we have discussed in the nuclear modernization podcast. There are three important points. One, the report claims that the nuclear warheads, Chinese nuclear warheads, could quadruple by 2030. That is, right now they have around 200 to 250 warheads. It could reach 1,000 by 2030. It could reach 700 by 2027. Irrespective of the numbers, an underlying message here is that Chinese nuclear modernization includes quantitative nuclear modernization. Second important point that the report discusses is regarding the DF-26 missile, which is a dual capable missile. Just a brief highlight before discussing DF-27. If you want to read about DF-27, I will recommend the listeners to take a look at Takshashila ORF joint discussion document, occasional paper on China's nuclear ambiguity and impact on India, because we have Karthik, my co-author Karthik Bomakanti, and I have given a lot of importance to DF-26, which is a dual swap, hot swappable, dual use missile. So the important point that this report, the DoD, coming back to DoD report, the important point that the DoD report says or mentions is that Chinese scholarship is thinking about developing low-yield nuclear weapons to increase the deterrence value of the PRC's nuclear force. Why are they thinking that? Because they fear that US could use them in Taiwan contingency case, or when Chinese are advancing towards Taiwan, US could use this. So that's why they are thinking of developing that, and DF-26 could be one of the early low-yield weapon system for which can be used. That is the second most important part of this. Third is the last year's report also talked about launch on. This year's report talks about launch on warning. And if you see whatever that has happened in past 12 months, formation of silos, improvement of technology, it clearly hits that some of Chinese force, nuclear force, is moving towards launch on warning nuclear posture. That's the third most important thing. The fourth most important thing in nuclear modernization is the nuclear triad. We are already aware about the land-based nuclear missiles or missile inventory that China operates. The report says that they are operating 6 operational SSBNs right now, and the next 2 would be Type 096. They would be deployed very soon. Considering the span of 40 years, considering the 40 years lifespan of Chinese submarines, they say that Chin class submarine and Type 06 would be operated concurrently. So these are the 4 important highlights from the nuclear part. The triad, just to mention briefly, triad also includes the air part, which is the most underdeveloped part of Chinese nuclear inventory. So moving on from first to second important highlight or the most important factor is regarding cross-strait problems. Now, cross-strait problems could easily be one of the most discussed and worrying aspects involving Chinese security in the world. It is alongside India, but since we are based out of India, we discuss India-China problems more than the cross-strait problems. But cross-strait could be easily most discussed topic in the world right now. The DoD report warns that China by 2027 could have the capability or could develop the capability to conduct cross-strait operations. They are not saying that China will conduct cross-strait operations, but they are saying that they could have the capabilities to conduct that. Why is 2027 important? Because going back in past, when the reforms were introduced, 2020 was when PLA was supposed to be mechanized. 2035 was when PLA was supposed to be intelligentized. And 2050 was when, or 2049 was when PLA was to be converted into a world-class force. But last year, Xi Jinping, but this year, not last year, Xi Jinping added 2027 as an important milestone. 2027 is when PLA is completing 100 years of existence because it was formed in 1927. So considering all these factors, 2027 is an important goal, and the document says that China could develop the capabilities where it could do a Taiwan invasion by 2027. Then the third important aspect is about informatized military. This report says that informatization is one of the key goals that the PLA is looking to achieve by 2025, and they have started working on it. The report discusses the recent development in informatization and identifies network system departments that operates technical reconnaissance bases, a number of signal intelligence bureau and several research institutes. It also identifies or highlights space system department that operates at least 8 bases, including those whose core mission are to launch, track, and also conduct R&D regarding satellites vital to China's overhead C4IR ISR architecture. The report, this is important, that report highlights that SSF operates tracking, telemetry, and command stations in Namibia, Pakistan, and Argentina. So these are some important aspects that the report highlights about the PLA SSF. So Aditya, broadly, these are the three things that I consider as the most important development or themes that one should focus on while reading the China Military Power 2021 report. I'll repeat these themes again. One, nuclear, China's nuclear modernization, both qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative being improvement in triad platform deliveries, and quantitative being increase in the number of warheads. Second, cross-strait problems and reports identification of Chinese capabilities which could be enough for an invasion in 2027. And third, general development regarding intelligentized military, which China is trying to achieve by 2035.
Interesting. So, Suyash, since you've given us such a great primer on the report, would you be comfortable with telling us a few more highlights for the sections that are in the paper?
Sure, Aditya. Yes, apart from three most important things, there are other important things that have happened in 2020, which this report highlights and gives insights on. First and foremost, as I've already spoken in the introduction, it's regarding the Joint Operation Military Doctrine. In November 2020, the CMC, which is the military bureaucracy or the chief body of the army, issued Chinese People's Liberation Army Joint Operation Outline Trial. It is described as a top level of a PLA's combat doctrine system in the new era that would strengthen the requirement and procedures for joint operations, combat support, national defense mobilization, and political work. So as I have already mentioned before November 2020, the previous guidelines, operation regulation guidelines were published in 1999. So because reforms have happened in 2015, it makes these guidelines very important. And some scholars believe, these guidelines are a part of reforms. So what are these guidelines? What do they do? The report highlights that the outline establishes. I am using outline and guideline interchangeably because of the language issues. Because because of the language, it is directly converted into English as outline, but it is interpreted as guidelines. So the outline establishes a system for the PLA's joint operation, which is the most important thing that the army is focusing on right now. And it also focuses on clarifying basic issues regarding the organization and implementation of joint operation, command rights and responsibilities, the principles, requirements, and procedures of joint operations, combat support, national defense mobilization, and political work. As you can see, all these are major work that the PLA does. There is not much data available because it came out in November and it is not published openly. Most of it is on interpretation, but that was the most important development that happened in 2020. Apart from that, there are some individual service. This is at a command level or directive level. Apart from that, there are some individual service updates or service highlights. I'll come to services one by one. Army, yes. Army, it was an important year for PLA Army because it was involved in border problems with India. So also alongside, as you have read on multiple occasions, or as listeners have read on multiple occasions, newer weapon systems were commissioned in Army this year. And this was largely in Tibet and Xinjiang, where newer weapon systems were commissioned. So Army benefited from that. But despite that, the report highlights that there is significant number, 40% of Chinese Army's main battle tank are old. And also a significant number of infantry brigade also employs outdated weapons. So this is regarding the Army. Now the most important or the interesting part, PLA Navy. PLA Navy is the largest naval fleet in the world. They are right now maintaining 355 ships. The report adds that by 2025, they would have 420 ships. And by 2030, they would have 460 ships. But I would take these claims with a pinch of salt. As any naval observer like one yourself, Aditya, would always highlight that the commissioning cost is just 30% of the total cost that a vessel has that is required for a vessel. The rest 70% is in maintenance and other things. So it is but natural that with such a big vessel fleet, the commissioning rate will slow down going ahead. But apart from that, this year they commissioned its first cruiser, and they have launched some amphibious warships. Also, one interesting point that I've noted while reading the report was this year they launched 9 Qingdao class corvettes. So now, out of the 70 that they want to commission or deploy in their force, 50 are on water or in water. So this is an important development that the report highlights. What is a corvette? Corvette is a small ship used in the near seas. Now, moving on from PLA Navy to PLA Air Force, the report highlights that the PLA Air Force and PLA Navy constitute the largest aviation force in the Indo-Pacific region, with 800 of the 1800 fourth plus generation aircraft. So this is something interesting. Two interesting aspects that I would like to highlight from this report is regarding H-6N bomber, which is a part of their triad, and H-20. The report doesn't say anything about H-20, but H-20, for our listeners, is their newest strategic bomber, which would soon be deployed or commissioned with the PLA Air Force, and which could also have nuclear duty. So this is something important that the listeners should remember. Apart from that, I've already spoken about nuclear and rocket force and strategic support force. Also, just one important point that Joint Logistics Support Force had a good year because of the pandemic. They were the first force to respond to conduct logistics facility during the outbreak of a pandemic in China. Also, an interesting point or a notable point, JLSF, the Joint Logistics Support Force, is headquarters in Wuhan, where the pandemic or the epidemic started, allegedly, reportedly started. So it is very important, and they had a good operational year this time. Apart from that, the report also talks about Reserve Force, Maritime Militia, PAP, and the recent changes that have happened upon that. Moving on to the next important highlight, I feel global power projection is something that the report deep dives into. The report highlights that PLA is now focusing on mid-air and mid-sea refueling. If you have followed what we are writing at Takshashila, we are saying that this was a major limitation. So since this was a major limitation, or is still a major limitation, but since 2015, when the Defense White Paper said that now PLA should look at from being a green sea to a blue sea navy, and from being a near air force to being a long distance and strategic air force. The major limitation that the PLA had was regarding mid-air fueling and mid-sea fueling. But the recent report highlights that some part of it is taken care of. They have given some number additions that they have made to the forces that has taken care of it. But this is something very interesting. They are acutely aware of their problems and they are working towards it. The report also highlights that Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, UAE, Kenya, Seychelles, Tanzania, Angola, and Tajikistan would be the potential countries where PLA could erect their facilities, military facilities or military outposts. So this is something that Quad countries should be watchful about. Finally, I also feel this report has something about biological and chemical warfare, which is very interesting because previous reports, this aspect was missing. Consider this as a post-COVID fact that a small section regarding biological warfare was added in this report. Also, finally, yes, this report also talks about espionage, which plays a major role in PLA's research and development. So these, Aditya, according to me, were key highlights in reading the DoD's 2021 report.
Very interesting, Suresh, especially the fact that the PLA is aware of with their shortcomings and are actively trying to bridge the gap. So that really puts everybody else who's into great power competition on their toes, literally. And I think the fact that some coincidences with Wuhan and the positioning of a certain element of the PLA, I think those are some funny aspects to it. So, on that note, folks, we'll take a short break. Don't go anywhere.
Your computer can be compromised in many ways, and all cyber attacks ultimately affect your files and apps by accessing everything that's on your PC. Intel vPro keeps you safe from cyber attacks using the Intel Hardware Shield, which has 3 groups of capabilities. First, advanced threat protection, quickly detecting issues like ransomware and crypto mining. Second, below the OS security, identifying unauthorized changes to hardware. And lastly, application and data protection, preventing malware injections. So, secure your organization's productivity with Intel vPro's hardware-based security. Visit intel.in/IT Heroes to know more. Remember, Intel vPro is built for business.
Welcome back, folks. We're discussing the latest edition of the US Department of Defense China Power Report. So moving on, Suyash, we've discussed about the PLA and how the report portrays it in 2020. So moving on to India, what should be the aspects that India should really keep an eye out on that this report highlights?
I'm glad, Aditya, that you brought this up. One problem or one limitation I think of this report is that this report doesn't talk enough about India, or the weak, or I'll just rephrase it. I think the weakest part of this report is regarding India China, and that is something surprising considering they had or they are involved in an ongoing military problems at several points on the line of actual control. There are only 2 interesting aspects about the report. The report briefly says what happened over the past, how the forces were built up, and what happened in Galwan, leading to casualties on both the sides. And then the report highlights that there is a village that China has built in Arunachal, and the report highlights that China has, in the course of the standoff, China has deployed a fiber connection, fiber optic, near its border for better connectivity. I will link it to my upcoming research, which will be hopefully published in next 15 to 20 days, which is on Tibet. In that research, I highlight that it is just one of the villages. It's not just one village. China is building around 630 villages on India-China, China-Bhutan, and China-Nepal borders. And since borders are not clearly marked, some of them could be on India's territory, or the territory that India claims it's there, or the disputed territory. So it's not just one village. There are many such examples of that. That is point number 1. Point number 2, I'll not deep dive into the research because the document is due very soon. But I can just briefly say that the internet connectivity is nothing new, because these villages are also connected very well with internet. As my document will highlight all those things without going into further detail of what the document has. I feel that these are 2 important aspects. The India-China aspect is very weak in this report. But broadly, I think that India should be worried about China's military modernization in the form of advanced weapon deployment in the PLA army and Tibetan Xinjiang military regions, brigadization of PLA units, which is very important because brigadization, combined arm brigadization is something which makes them more mobile. So that is something, and they have completed the brigadization of army. They are doing this for past 10 years, 10, 15 years. So that is something that India should worry about. Development of swarm technologies and drones. They are moving towards it. That is something India should worry about. China's efforts to use advanced tech in armed forces, of course, because India is always playing a catching up role in advanced technology and application. That is something that we should worry about. Of course, the cliched or most developed, most discussed thing, PLA is increasing footprints in the Indian Ocean region. But India should also worry about Joint Logistic Support Forces increasing capabilities which were displayed this time. This is something that would help them to sustain longer in the forward positions at the LAC in the future. And finally, China should also worry about China's nuclear modernization and its nuclear ambiguity. I feel in India, nuclear ambiguity or nuclear modernization is not enough discussed because generally we consider both countries as NFU, and that is why this dynamic is very stable. But I think that there should be more. I think that there should be more discussion on nuclear relations between the two countries. So broadly, this is my own understanding. These things India should worry about while reading the report. But as I've mentioned earlier, this report is slightly disappointing on the India front because it only has it only discusses India in 1.5 2 pages.
Indeed, and it's really surprising because the general conception is that India is the biggest part of the bulwark that the United States is trying to build in the Indo-Pacific region to contain China's expansionist tendencies, or rather China's rise. So, Suyash, do you have any concluding thoughts on the report?
Yes, I think, Aditya, there are 2-3 things that our listeners should note. One, the listener should look at the effective control definition that the report highlights. This is based on the PLA literature itself. PLA strategies describe effective control as a multifaceted effort to set favorable strategic posture and to guide the military operation with precise control across the full peace to war continuum. That is something that you should definitely read, how they understand effective control. Escalation management is also something that everyone should definitely read. How PLA strategists view escalation control. So PRC views on the conflict escalation suggests confidence in controllability of conventional conflict and willingness to conduct offensive operations to demonstrate Beijing's resolve. This shows how they use deterrence. So this is something that gives a hint about how PLA is thinking. And a lot of research can be based around using these two concepts. So these two concepts should definitely, a listener should read these two concepts. Also, they should look at PLA's defense budget. I am looking at it right now. So despite the fall in their GDP growth, their official defense budget has constantly been increasing since 2011. And also, they have given the relative budget in comparison to other South Asian countries and also Russia, Japan, and Taiwan. So that is something interesting. And finally, I will conclude with one point that the purpose of this report is to create awareness amongst policymakers so that they could release more funds for the US armed forces. So invariably, some aspects could be exaggerated. For example, DoD report says a lot about warheads for a long. The previous editions of DoD report have commented that the warheads would increase to triple, it will quadruple, but it has not happened. Certainly, there is a trend of increase, but numbers could be debated. So, while consuming this report, one thing should be noted that this report's purpose is to create awareness amongst congressmen for increasing the budget. So I am not saying that every aspect is wrong. I'm saying everything is right. Trends are absolutely correct. But claims should be taken with a pinch of salt. They may be right. 99% of them are correct, but some of them could be over-exaggerated.
Very interesting, Suyash. Thank you so much for this, for these insights on the document, and I think our listeners would really benefit from reading the report themselves as well. And on that note, folks, we'll call it a wrap. If you like today's discussion, do check out all past and future episodes of All Things Policy.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, it's a double century episode. Ashwin, DJ, and Varun are joined by our special guest, Nikhil Chopra. They talk about the last few games of the T20 World Cup and where it all went wrong for Team India. Two of the most cherished things about festivals are food and memories. On KBCD, Farhad and Sunhetru take you on a trip down memory lane. It's lined with great food and joyful moments. On The Habit Coach, Ashton is joined by Sriram, the author of Happiness Habits, the Urban Professional's Guide to Good Living. They discuss how to make happiness a habit in today's world. On Tere Mere Raaste, Keshav takes us to the city of Warangal. Legend has it that the entire city was carved with one rock. And on The Wire Talks, Siddharth talks to Ghazala Wahab, executive editor of Force magazine. They discuss her new book, Born a Muslim, Some Truths About Islam in India. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And do follow us on YouTube. We have a number of different channels. You can find them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, where you'll be able to take a look at all of the channels we have. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Slay Coffee, Intel, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much. You make this possible.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market, and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.